dias, and welcome back to another episode. We are in Joshua Tree National Park. When I say we, I'm with Wes Creasel. I'd show him to you, but it's super dark out here. Say hi, Wes. Hey. That's Wes. Anyways, we are out here shooting stars, specifically the Milky Way. Milky Way's actually directly behind me right now. And I wanted to do something specific on the EOS R. The Canon EOS R, I wanted to try different 50mm lenses on there. So I'm going to take the 50mm RF prime, I'm going to take the 50mm Canon Nifty 50, and then I bought a Takumar lens that is a 55mm, and we're going to try to shoot stars with all three of them and see what kind of results we can get from each of them and how different they are. I currently have a Canon ultrasonic 20mm. That's what I've been shooting most of the night. Here's a couple images of the shots that I took earlier. And so those turned out pretty nice. I'm super happy to come out here a second time. This is my second visit to Joshua Tree, and it's currently, let's see here, 2:08 in the morning. One of the main goals was to shoot the Arch Rock, which I haven't done yet, only because there's just like a million people over there, and I kind of wanted to be by myself. So I'll head over there in a couple hours. Because I'm testing out a 50mm lens on the EOS R, that each of those shots are going to be cropped in that much more. Again, I'm shooting 20mm right here, and you can imagine if I'm shooting 50mm, I'm going to be that much closer. So from what I've heard, if you're using 50mm, you get a little bit of a sharper image. We will test that out, and we will also see what a more expensive lens, like a 50mm RF prime L-series lens, going against a 50mm Nifty 50 and a Takumar vintage film lens, what the differences are and what they look like on camera on the Canon EOS R. So let's get to shooting. It's currently 2:40 in the morning, and I am using the PhotoPills app to gauge where the Milky Way is, and it is directly right behind me, almost going vertical, as you can see here. So what I've got framed out is a Joshua Tree here in the midground or the foreground. So the Milky Way should be shooting out right out of it, behind it. That is the goal. I've got the 50mm RF 1.2 lens on. Since the f-stop on the Takumar is wide open at 2.0, I'm going to keep it at least at an f-stop of 2 on the RF lens, but I maybe even stop down to 2.8. I think that's a magic number for being out here and shooting stars. I know a lot of times they say use a super fast lens and keep it wide open, but I found in research and in some of the stuff that I've been shooting earlier that 2.8 is plenty wide. So let's get it going. Let's take a few shots. All right, gang. I quickly realized that the shot with the Joshua Tree and the Milky Way behind it wasn't going to work out for me. That part of the Milky Way isn't as strong, so I turned the camera around and subsequently shot the 50mm RF lens, the 50mm Nifty 50, and the 55mm Takumar lens, all at 2.8, and these are the results of the shots that I took. Gang, I want to take a quick break from the video, and I wanted to talk about the 3 images that I took with all the 3 different 50mm lenses that I put on the Canon EOS R to shoot some Milky Way photography. So all of these images, the only thing that I did in Lightroom was to adjust the exposure on each one of them just to get the same look and feel. That's the only slider outside of the texture slider. I really like this new slider that's in Lightroom, so if you have not updated Lightroom lately, go ahead and do so, and you will see this texture slider there. So the texture slider just gives me just what it says, a little bit more texture, and I liked that look and feel, and I gave every single one of them a bump of a +32. So I had the same look and feel. Outside of that, I did not touch anything else in Lightroom. Another thing that I wanted to mention in each of these images that I did not out in the field, and that was I was not focusing on any of the foreground elements. So most of that is all silhouetted. What I wanted to focus on was the stars, and I did that. And I will say all three of these lenses, whether it be the Nifty 50, whether it be the RF 50mm lens, or whether it be the Takumar 55mm, I really enjoyed looking at these three different images. So let's just take a little bit of a deeper dive into each one of these images in Lightroom. So the first one that you're looking at here is the Canon 50mm RF lens. I shot it at ISO 800 and I kept the shutter open for 11 seconds on this one. Once again, I changed the exposure a little bit on this one. I bumped it up to 2.15, again, so I could get each one of the images about the same look and feel. You'll see the foreground pretty silhouetted, and the stars just look so good. The galactic center on the Milky Way is present. I could bring a lot of this out. So if I wanted to edit any of these images, they would be fantastic for developing the galactic center inside of the Milky Way. For example, if I bumped up the contrast a little bit here, you're gonna start to see it take shape. And I really am enjoying these images, and you can see that the stars even pop by just moving the contrast slider a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and reset that and put it back to where we started from. All right, let's take a look at the Nifty 50 lens. If you notice the image moves slightly to the right or shifts to the right, that's just because the Milky Way is not waiting for me to change lenses. And that's just movement in the short time that I took to exchange one lens for another. You see a similar look and feel here. This one is shot at ISO 3200 at 11 seconds open shutter. And again, the exposure's bumped up just by 0.2. And again, that texture slider is the only one I touched on this one as well. And it is at a +32. Let's take a look at the 55mm Takumar lens. I shot this one at ISO 3200 and kept the shutter open for 8.4 seconds. This one I bumped the exposure to 0.75 on the plus side, and again the texture is just like the other ones at +32. So one of the things that I want to go and look at is I want to look at the North Star, which is evident in all of these images. And if we really get in there and look at these stars, there is the North Star. It shines bright, and you can tell it's there, and it's got a little bit of flare to it, and it's starting to get those little star flares, and I really like how this turned out. Now, if we go backwards one and look at the 55mm Nifty 50, or sorry, 50mm Nifty 50, that star starts to gain a little bit more shape. It's a little faded, but nonetheless, it's there. It's soft, as they call it. It's a little soft. But nonetheless, that thing's so far away, it looks pretty good. And if we go to the RF lens, you're gonna see that this one just has a little bit better shape. It's not as soft as the Nifty 50 and starts to take a little bit more shape, but looks pretty similar to the Nifty 50. And both those lenses, the Nifty 50 and the RF lens, are a little bit better than the Takumar lens. But hey, the Takumar lens is hanging in there for being such an old lens. I think a 1950s lens, if I'm not mistaken. Might be 60s. But, and then one other thing I want to look at here. So we're in the RF lens image. Take a look at the stars themselves. So you'll see that they kind of have or take on a little bit of a football shape. If we look at the Nifty 50s, they also take on a little bit of a football shape. And if we take a look at the Takumar lens, they kind of take on the look of the light that would come off of a flashlight. You kind of get the idea that this lens is going to be a little bit softer, and it's not going to be as detailed and shape oriented. However, when we pull it back out and we put it back into just an image that we're taking a look at, even in print form or in digital form, it does a pretty darn good job. And let's take a look at the Nifty 50, and let's take a look finally at the RF image. Now, I do like the RF image the best. I think it provides me with the most detail, but I would not hesitate to print all three, and that might be something I need to do next, just to take a look at what the print quality would be. And that's a closer look at the three images that I took with three different lenses on the Canon EOS R, and I really was impressed by the detail that all three lenses provided for me. All right, let's get back to Joshua Tree. Needless to say, the 50mm, again, crops your image in that much more than, and of course, like the 20mm I was using earlier, it's gonna crop in a lot more than that. The 50mm is definitely not ideal for shooting stars, but definitely can give you better results in terms of pinpoint stars and Milky Way detail. Got about another couple hours before the sun comes up, and yeah, no, I gotta go get that arch still. I think it's empty over there now. All right, let's get it. Okay, at this point, we have been here all night. It is 5:59, just about 6 a.m. in the morning. And I feel like, you know, Joshua Tree did not disappoint. The stars were out in abundance. I've got the sun coming up over the hill there shortly. I've got something set up, but you know, I'm just chilling. One, I'm tired. It's funny because the whole place now has revealed itself, and it's just beautiful. It's nature at its finest. If you've never been to Joshua Tree, get out here, especially at night. Book an overnight trip. I'm out here for a couple hours. It's a beautiful national park. It's a beautiful place to visit. So some of the things that I learned from shooting on the 50 was that it was harder than I thought it was gonna be. Certainly everything was cropped in, far different than shooting on a 20mm or something that's wide. A couple tips to remember while doing astrophotography. A wider lens is an important thing. Wes rented a 14mm, I believe, and f2.8? f2.8. Here comes that sun just peeking over. Oh, let me shoot this real quick. Let me shoot this. All right, I don't remember where I was at, but the sun is in full bloom. I think I was just talking about the beauty of this place and some tips on shooting astrophotography. A wide angle lens would be superb. Something that has a fast aperture, preferably a 2.8 would do. And from what I've read, for astrophotography especially, you get a lot less chromatic aberrations happening in your images when you stay at about 2.8, maybe a little higher. So a kit lens would even work at 3.5 as long as it's wide and you have stars in abundance like we did last night. You certainly will be successful. If you have a stabilized lens, make sure the stabilization is off because it'll be hunting and pecking for stabilizations. So any shake will certainly affect your image. Of course, you should have a tripod, a very stable tripod, preferably with a hook. So if it's a windy day, you can hook a backpack or some type of weight to the bottom of the tripod. As a general rule, use the 500 rule, which just means take the number 500, divide it by the focal length of your lens. If you're shooting, for example, on a 50mm and you divide that into 500, you're going to shoot for about 10 seconds. So if it's a shorter lens, you're obviously going to have more time where you can leave the shutter open. And that allows you to get nice stars without them starting to trail. So that number that you get from the 500 rule is just letting you know that you will leave your shutter open for that amount of time or less. You can play with it a little bit. You can actually go over that number or less seconds that you leave your shutter open and play with it. There's no right or wrong. Just look at the image, and if you like it, that's all that matters, and that's what's important. Had a lot of fun coming out here. This was my second time out here. The last time I came out here, it was absolutely miserable. We are in Joshua Tree National Park. It is cold. I am freezing my buns off. It was so windy and so cold. And I wasn't prepared. So today I was prepared for cold, heat. It's supposed to be up in the high 80s here today, so it's starting to heat up a little bit. But it was a very, very nice evening. So some things specific to the Canon EOS R, the focus peaking and the focus guides, they are lifesavers to me. I really enjoy utilizing the focus guides, which actually pinpoint a specific area. I just focused on the North Star, which is the brightest star up there. So yeah, the focus guides are really cool, and the focus peaking where it lights up the sky or anything that you were focusing on, and it starts to give you these red little dots. I think you can choose from green and another different color, but I use the red, and it starts to put little points that it's saying that those spots or those spaces on your screen or those places on your screen are in focus. So overall, I am just loving this camera and the RF lenses, and it was just another day that I was able to bring out the Canon EOS R and have a great time in this beautiful playground. All right, that's gonna do it. If you're not subscribed to my channel, I would appreciate it from the bottom of my heart that if you would subscribe. I will keep creating content and we can start chatting, so please leave a comment down below. Like this video if you liked any part of it. Always sprinkle a little bit of fun in your life, and when you're having that fun, remember to always keep it fun enough. Until the next video, I appreciate you watching. Thanks so much. We'll see ya. I don't know why I pause as if... Oh boy. All right, let's get back into this. And actually, one of the goals was to shoot the, what's it called? No, the arch? The rock arch. Arch rock? So one of the, and we will also see what a 50 millimeter. Darn bugs. Getting a little freaked out by all the little critters out here. Yeah. Bop, bop, bop. Oh, come on, dude. Get it together. Ugh. I'm still recording. Nah, come on. Turn off the camera, Pablo.